Thank you, Peter. Well, hopefully things will be getting a little better for Jacques and for Olivier Panis as we get this session underway, John, for the second hour. It's going to start in just over 7 minutes.
Indeed. Well, this second hour is going to be a little bit more maybe productive for some of the teams. The track has now got rubber down on it. They are going to have to start to do the work that they really didn't get through this morning. Not very many teams spent a lot of time on the racetrack. They seem to spend more time actually in the pit lane itself. And as Dave Richards has just explained, oversteer appears to be a major problem for a lot of the cars. Certainly that was the cause of many of the cars going off track, or certainly just simply spinning. So now they're going to have to get down to work. They've got 1 hour in which they can do the kind of work that they might do in preparation for the Grand Prix itself, with a bit of fuel on board, run through the two tyre choices and then prepare for Saturday.
Eddie Irvine down in the pits didn't go very quickly this morning at all. The Jaguars once again struggling, but as you've talked about quite a lot already, John, we know the situation that they're in at the moment, and they're just got to do the best they can at this point and hope that they can just get a little bit more performance out of the car before some very important decisions are due to be made from Niki Lauda and the rest of the crew there at Jaguar as to how to deal with the rest of the season. Great disappointment for them, and tough for the motivation. I mean, you've got so many guys in a modern Formula 1 team, John, and all the guys at Cosworth as well, putting so much effort into it, and yet having to struggle with a car that's just not working.
Well, it is a big problem, and indeed the man who's really at the sharp end of that is Niki Lauda, who I believe is actually standing with Peter Windsor right now in the pit lane.
That's correct, yes. Nicky, I'm with John Watson, and he says hello, of course.
Hello, John. How are you doing?
We're just talking about the team at the moment, so can you run us through your performance this morning?
Performance this morning, we're trying a lot of things, as you can imagine, to get the Jaguar a little better. So we're trying some underfloors and barge ports and other things. So we're going to do this all day long today, and then to hopefully get the best solution for tomorrow's qualifying.
So a bit of a test session for you, really.
It is important we do test sessions because the Melbourne performance was not that good, so we need to move forward as quick as we can.
Can you pinpoint a moment last year where the design of the car went wrong? You took a wrong turning, as it were?
No, because the car was down to paperwork, bring me 8% more downforce, reduce the weight by 35 kilos. So all these things were done. So on paper it looks good, but unfortunately when it started running we had some mechanical problems with uprights, which really delayed our testing for 1 month. And then by the time we had the car mechanically in order, then we were looking into the aero package, which is not as efficient as it should be. And this is where we stand today.
Well, you used your genius in Melbourne to ensure the car stayed out of trouble on the first corner by having it at the back of the grid. What's your plan for Sunday?
Hopefully, I mean, let's wait and see. We have to improve our grid positions here. This is what we're aiming for. So let's wait and see what happens tomorrow, then we discuss the strategy.
Very best of luck.
Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks to Niki, a three-time world champion. But John, he didn't become three-time world champion by starting at the back of the grid, as Eddie had to do in Melbourne.
Indeed not, and Niki, in fact, about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, actually got on the overalls, put the helmet on, and went out and drove the car because Niki wanted to actually understand, when he's in a debriefing with Eddie and Pedro de la Rosa, when they discuss various aspects, particularly of how the engine and throttle operate, how the gear change, all that is different to how Niki raced a Grand Prix car back. I think last time he raced was 1985, in fact. So he did the practical thing, got into the car, drove it, and he did a good job within his ability to drive a car after 15 or 17 years. Got some of the feel, but of course what he wouldn't be able to do is fully appreciate and understand the problems that Jaguar are having right now.
Looking into the Jordan pit, Takuma Sato looks relaxed, he looks cool and confident, doesn't he? He was 6th fastest this morning for Jordan, the rookie driver coming in as the reigning British Formula 3 champion. He's got the support from Honda as well, but he deserves that spot in the team, and he's showing just what sort of ability he has. There were the times this morning, 6th fastest, just behind Jenson Button, and Jordan showing a little bit better pace than we saw sometimes. They were, in fact, going pretty well in Melbourne. Sato himself was going very quickly, but had that accident in qualifying, which set the whole thing back.
Yeah, it was very disappointing indeed, because as we mentioned in the broadcast in Melbourne, it wasn't Sato's fault. It was a software downshift problem, similar to Mark Webber was talking about this morning, and it caught out Sato, took the car wide, and once you're wide you get onto the green or the dirty part of the racetrack, and he had too much momentum, it just carried the car off. But I mean, you see a young guy like that coming out of Formula 3, which he dominated in the UK last year, jumps into a car with, well, let's say not as much horsepower as Honda would like, certainly less than their rivals from Japan, Toyota, appear to be able to generate in their first effort at a Grand Prix engine. but nonetheless his enthusiasm and commitment in the car in Melbourne was a joy to watch. I mean, he just flung the car around with total abandon. I mean, something you'd expect to see maybe from someone like Michael Schumacher when he was doing something rather special. But here's this young man from Japan, but arguably and potentially the best talent in Formula One yet to emerge from Japan, doing something which, well, you know, you think he'd been doing it all his life.
Well, that is a feature of his driving, and has been over the last few years. Great car control, whether it's in a Formula 3 car or apparently in a Formula 1 car, and yet such a different kind of machine. There's his teammate Giancarlo Fisichella, a very experienced driver in comparison to Takuma Sato, and of course a great opportunity for Fisichella this year, having made the switch back to Jordan, but he's still chasing that first elusive win. He's had a pole position, that was in Austria back in 1998, but still chasing a win in Formula 1.
Interestingly, that Fisichella was one of the few drivers who actually chose to return to Europe to spend the 8-10 days between the two events. Most of them stayed out in the Far East, went on holiday, combined it with some training and just basically preparation. As Michael Schumacher said, stay out of the air conditioning, allow your body to get conditioned to this heat. I mean, it is inescapable. There you see in the McLaren pits David Coulthard standing by the cooling fan. He will want to stay as cool as possible. And team boss Ron Dennis on that rather cool looking new piece of team gear that has been introduced this year. Maybe not what Ron would have chosen personally, knowing his tastes in clothes, but anyway, go with the flow, my friend, and make sure that your driver David Coulthard has a reliable car for this next 1 hour session, and certainly through all of Saturday he will need all the track time he has to catch up than that he lost in that 1 hour this morning.
Yeah, it's proving to be a difficult start to the season for David, but he's just got to concentrate, not let it get to him. He's experienced enough. He's been in these difficult situations before, and often we've seen the best from David when he seems to be under pressure and things seem to be going wrong for him. Let's just hope that comes true for him this weekend. Cars prepared to come out. We're just about 20 seconds away from the start of this session, and we hope to see everybody coming back out to see whether Michael Schumacher's time will hold from this morning. There's more rubber going down. We'll expect to see the times improving as we go through the course of the afternoon. So down at the end of the pit lane is Mark Webber. He led them out last time as well, John, but he didn't last many laps because he fell off. Let's hope he stays on a bit better this time.
Yes, he's got to get out and get some track time. Hopefully that downshift problem that he had has been cured. Alan McNish out behind him. And then it's going to be a very busy field as we've now got the Jordan out of Takuma Sato, very eager to get out, and it'll be interesting to get a glimpse of Sato and just see how high that level of confidence that he illustrated in Melbourne is as they come through some of the quickest sweeps on this wonderful Sepang circuit, down into turn 4, and then this long left-hander which is just about flat out into the next right, which is turn 6. You can see the rise and fall much greater, in fact, in reality on the ground.
Oh, that's Webber. That's Mark Webber, who has got a very ominous trail of smoke. Oh, what is going on for Mark Webber? This is desperately bad news for him, considering he got hardly any laps in this morning, and now it looks as though it's all over this afternoon.
Yes, down between the exit of 6 and into 7, and something that did look like it was mechanical on the right-hand side of the engine, and what a disappointment for the man who really... It was the joy of Australia 2 weeks ago. He's had a testing time this morning. He's had an even more testing time this afternoon. All they can hope to do is actually let him get into Alex Young's car. But the trouble is, Mark Webber's about 6'2" and Alex Young's about 5'6". Big problem to get them into the share cars. He needs to get track time. The big problem that will face Webber in tomorrow is that he could find himself outside of the 107%. The team have got to start thinking about that already, just in case there are further problems for Webber tomorrow with his car.
Well, that really is very disappointing, but as you talked earlier, John, about the highs and lows of motorsport, that's something you just have to be used to. And Mark, of course, an experienced driver. He's come up through the ranks of Formula Ford, Formula 3, sports car racing with Mercedes, and Formula 3000 to get this opportunity in Formula 1, and it's just not working out for him here today. He's just got to keep calm tomorrow and hope that he gets some decent track time in. Well, out on track at the moment, we've got a number of cars. Ralf Schumacher's on track. Jarno Trulli, here he is, just coming down into turn 15 at the moment. Just a little bit of a slide coming into the corner there. And then that Renault V10 engine, the flattest of the engines currently in Formula One. When I say flattest, that means that the angle between the V, between the two banks of cylinders, is the widest currently used in Formula One. The idea to try and get the centre of gravity as low as possible. Well, certainly it seems to be working a lot better this year than it did last.
Yeah, the initial problem with that very wide angle V was lack of torsional rigidity, and the more you widen the angle, the more difficult it is to retain torsional rigidity. Now, some other engine manufacturers have gone to a 90-degree V as opposed to the 111 of the Renault, but people like Cosworth with the Jaguar and the engine that Tom Walkinshaw is using is still the 72-degree. They believe they can get the horsepower and the weight, but they've got the structural rigidity. So it's all horses for courses. There's always an advantage one way, but there's a downside in the other way, and they've had to do a lot of work to stiffen up the engine block and the whole rear end of the car to make sure that everything stays pointing in the right direction under load.
On board here with Jarno Trulli. Let's just watch the Italian at work for a moment in the Renault. Teammate, of course, to Jenson Button. There's David Coulthard getting ready to come out now. We saw he had a problem earlier on this morning, which we gather was the collection box. Is that just a newfangled term for catch tank, or?
I have to think it's something like that. It's probably a collection area for liquids. I mean, very often teams overfill their oil tanks and then let the oil tank find its own level, and the residue that gets chucked out would go into what they call a collector box, or whatever it is called. And if that somehow or other was the cause of the sudden apparent blue oil smoke and then subsequent fire, well, be it as it may, that's what they're telling us.
Well, let's hope David has a less troubled run this time. Across the line comes Jarno Trulli. It's still early days in this second session, so a time he sets that is not particularly rapid, but it's all useful data gathering. But again, look, mid-corner there, the back end sliding around, tricky turn one, turn two, trying to get on the power again there. And now let's watch Takuma Sato. What happened to him here?
Well, he just ran out of road and ran onto the grass. Again, the young man, incorrigible, just going very quickly, very soon, and that's the consequence.
Now we're looking at Alan McNish coming through that last part of the lap, just heading round to the last straight, and again sliding around a little bit on the exit of turn 14. They've got to get on the power well there, because they're building up to top speed here, behind the pits, past the grandstand, and then hard on the brakes once again.
Well, not a great deal of difference, just under a kilometre/hour difference between the power of the Toyota and the power of the BMW, but in fact that is not the story. It's more about the aerodynamics in the car, because I would assume that Williams may well be carrying more downforce. One would like to think that they're further down the aerodynamic path than Toyota currently are, but certainly one thing is very clear, and this was clear I think in Melbourne, if not before that Toyota have got a very, very strong engine indeed, and one that's probably close to that of BMW, considered the most powerful.
So David Coulthard almost ready to come out on track. Enrico Bernoldi, the Arrows driver, went very well this morning. Fourth fastest currently he sits after that morning time. And both Arrows running very quickly, with Frentzen in 7th place, using the Bridgestone tyres, which seem to be working well here today, we have to say. Bridgestone tyred cars 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th in this morning's free practice. I wonder if we're going to see similar this afternoon. Jenson Button, fastest of the Michelin users, in 5th.
And Rubens Barrichello makes his way down the pit lane to go out on track. And there we dive into the McLaren garage and have a look at David Coulthard. And I mean, well, they don't know what's going on, they're just jacking the car up.
It's taking their time at the moment, so there's no rush. We're just taking a look here at a graphic of the front suspension design and how the rear wishbone leg pickup is centrally mounted on the front of the McLaren.
Well, they've sort of gone halfway towards what Sauber have done. They've got a slightly different arrangement than Sauber, but principally it's to try and get as much airflow under the nose of the car, but it also depends on the height of the nose. Like the new Ferrari, the 2002 Ferrari's got a very, very high nose, so really it's quite difficult to make a structure that is sufficiently strong to ensure that there's total rigidity around that lower front wishbone, the front leg of that, to give the car good braking and steering control.
Well, the tyre blankets come off. Meanwhile, his teammate is on track, Kimi Raikkonen, and is putting in a fairly quick lap. Some improvements looking to come soon. from the other McLaren as David Coulthard comes out. Now, of course, the teams may well be, and in fact, he's gone second fastest, Kimi Raikkonen. Kimi Raikkonen second fastest now, the 1 minute 39.120. It's about half a second off Michael Schumacher's pace from earlier on today. And I wonder whether the Michelin users are trying some different tyres in this second free practice session.
Well, they have the choice of the prime tyre or the backup tyre, and no doubt they'll have a chance now to get more information with two cars out on circuit. But here, once again, Heinz Auer fencing in the arrows. Car looks quick on the track, and Heinz looks like he's got a lot of confidence as well.
He does. Just listening to the radio. Arrows. Enrique Bernoldi.
It's are very, very, very dirty. So be careful, okay? Be careful. You want one time it lap or?
There's Mark Webber still walking back after the disappointment of going out of this free practice session. Meanwhile, Kimi Raikkonen, there he is. Oh, and Michael's had another spin, would you believe it? Now, has he kept the engine running? Yes, he has. He stopped there because there was a Sauber coming past, and Michael now getting it back together. That's down at the first couple of corners. And now finally gets himself going the right way.
But what he did, Ben, it's the Montoya. They're going off everywhere.
Yeah, that's in a
back
different
on
area.
track, yes.
That's turn 5 that he's gone off at.
What Michael Schumacher did was he actually drove on the racetrack against the flow of traffic.
Yeah, and that's always a problem. Raikkonen has gone fastest. Kimi Raikkonen is fastest now. And suddenly McLaren has got these Michelins working, or perhaps have switched to a different compound, their option perhaps, because Raikkonen now is ahead of the Ferraris. Let's take another look at what happened to Michael Schumacher coming into turn 1 here.
So hard on the brakes, you brake very late into turn 1. Again, the back end of the car just steps away. Michael tries to control the car, realises he's not going to, so he just turns the other way, puts the power on. This is Montoya, this is down at turn 5. That's the corner we saw him having a big problem with in the morning session. This time it's a bit too much for the man to Columbia to hold. The car goes off track onto the grass.
Williams team having a smile about that, but watch this man, he's gone fastest in the first sector again. Kimi Raikkonen showing that McLaren have got good pace here in Malaysia. They might have had a disappointing first free practice, but he is really beginning to push. Fastest through the first sector. Second sector comes up, and as you can see, not quite as quick through that second sector.
You saw him turning in again. He had a little bit of oversteers. He turned in, would have to get out of the throttle, check it, but now back into the throttle, coming up to turn 14, and he's only got this and turn 15 before he completes the lap. I suspect it's going to be, maybe marginally quicker than his current fastest time, but certainly lost in that second segment. He'll be disappointed in that. But what a great performance from the young man, only in the second drive in the McLaren team. And he's gone back into the pits. He's decided it wasn't worth it. The team will have called him in. They'll say, don't waste a lap, come back in. We can work on those other parts of the track. And
David Coulthard, is the engine still running, John? Can he get this thing out of the gravel, though? That's the problem. I think he's going to get away with it.
Yes, I think he's been a bit funny again, going against the flow of traffic. I think that's the same place we saw Michael Schumacher go off, and that again is down in turn 9.
It's a little bit further around. It's around to that
14, yes.
Turn 12, 13 area. That's right. And that's a fast section of track to go off at as well there. We'll maybe get another look to see exactly how it all started, but dear oh dear, let's take a look here.
This is where we saw Barrichello go off in the morning. David grabs the front inside wheel, then he was not even anywhere near the dirty part of the track. Looks like the rear brakes grabbed, pulled the car around, and then David goes into the spin. Fortunately gets the control back, and then, well, when is it ever going to come right for David? I mean, that one was down to him this time. The other one was certainly down to the team this morning.
That's right. Well, he's managed to get out of trouble, and let's just hope that it can come together. Meanwhile, Giancarlo Fisichella's gone 4th fastest for Jordan. He's on another good lap now. Let me tell you, it's Raikkonen fastest ahead of Michael Schumacher, Barrichello, Fisichella 4th, Heidfeld 5th, and Bernoldi 6th from this morning's time. You can see the other times further on down the list. We're seeing plenty of drama in this second free practice session, and again, despite there being more rubber down, quite a lot of mistakes being made.
Well, a lot of mistakes being made, but because everybody's suffering from oversteer. Normally they say, we've got too much understeer, but it seems the big problem here this weekend is not front end grip, it's making the back bite to match the front.
Let's watch Rubens Barrichello and see whether the back end of his Ferrari is sticking to the road well. Well, it looked very good through there. Here he is, the tricky braking here for turn 14. That's where we saw Coulthard go off a moment ago and where Rubens himself went off earlier on this morning. We'll keep an eye on his times. He's not on a particularly quick lap, but maybe the next one will be a good one.
But somebody who is on a quick lap, we don't see him right now. Again, Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan. Personal best in the first two segments, and he's he's actually 0.8 of a second away from Barrichello, so we don't expect to see him make up that much time. But here he comes across the line. Fisichella currently in fourth place. Well, no positional improvement, and in fact that lap slower by a tenth of a second than his personal best.
Now taking a look here at Ralf Schumacher in the other Williams BMW, certainly using plenty of curb on the apex. Oh, what a great view. He actually hit our camera cone on the inside there, and that shows you just how close he's getting into the apex of the corner. Felipe Massa, the young Brazilian, another new superstar to watch in the Sauber, and has taken over from Kimi Raikkonen, and now it's Kimi Raikkonen's time. He's chasing. Raikkonen and the McLaren has set the pace, and Felipe Massa goes across the line. He's still learning the track at the moment. He's 13th fastest.
That's just, again, you see just even the Sauber well-balanced car, ideal car for a young driver coming into Formula One, and he's having to work really, really hard to keep the back of the car in control. Picks up speed, comes down now, one of the quicker parts of the track, then brakes ever so late, just around about 100 metres into turn 4, and then watch the car through 5 and 6.
Brakes. Ja, aber wir rennen nicht auch so.
quite
16th.
close, 16th place, yes.
Amongst the two Finnish drivers here, Nikosalo, of course, vastly more experienced, been around since '94. And let's look at Pedro de la Rosa. He's 5th quickest currently.
Yeah, De La Rosa coming into this turn 14, known as the Sunway Lagoon corner. This one leading onto one of these two parallel straights. It's a real double drag strip here in Malaysia. And you blast your way down here up to the top speeds. You can see his top speed there, 300.2 kilometers per hour. McNish with the current top speed at 304. So a better top speed. We didn't see them really featuring in the speed traps earlier on in the first session, but now the Jaguar more respectable, and he holds on to 5th place overall. Jenson Button looking at the times.
Yeah, De La Rosa's lap was about 4/10 of a second slower than the one that placed him up in 5th place, and again an indication that maybe that time was set on a set of brand new tyres, which would be at their best on the first flying lap. Again, probably with all the fuel pumped out. But at least, you know, it's good for the team to see themselves at the sharp end, even though what happens today may bear no relevance whatsoever to what we will see at this time on Saturday afternoon.
Jarno Trulli at work in the Renault, just uses a little bit of curb, nice and tidy, doesn't run too wide, tries to maintain the speed. As in the Ferrari pit, Michael Schumacher's ready to come back out. Looks as though he's got new tyres on that, and let's see whether he can keep it all pointing in a straight line this time. So now I think we've got a chance to hear from Eddie Jordan. He must be pleased, got Fisichella 4th.
Well, it's very early stages. It is nice, nevertheless. We've just tried a couple of different sets of tyres and getting ready, set up basically for the race at this stage, and later on and tomorrow morning we'll concentrate on the qualifying. But it's very hot here, and it's a very difficult set of circumstances to endure.
Eddie, you had a really tough time in Melbourne, just got trapped in the first corner thing. I mean, what does that do to you, to the team, in terms of getting the spares, getting all that stuff manufactured, shipped out? Must be an unbelievable logistics task. Mind you, your new sponsor probably helped you.
Well, DHL are probably expert in that field, John. It was such a bitter blow. The weekend, particularly for Giancarlo, it went fabulously well, never a slightest hint of a problem, and then we all saw the evidence of the crash, but that's motor racing, and we all know the pitfalls that surround us in that area. But it was a very bitter blow. I have to say, the last couple of weeks haven't been easy for me. I've been like a bear with a sore head, and so I've been a bit tetchy, and I think that is because you build up so much for the start of the season, and then everything unfolds in such a crescendo like that. It's probably not easy to endure.
Eddie, we know that Giancarlo went back to Monte Carlo and Takuma went off somewhere in the Far East for a holiday. What did you do between the races?
Well, I had an interesting time. I wanted to do something for some time. There's a fellow country person of ours, Christina Noble, who runs an orphanage in Saigon, in Ho Chi Minh City, and I wanted to go and do some support for there and what's going on. It's an unbelievable situation, what she is actually doing. And she will be the subject of This Is Your Life, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to see that. What she's doing for the young kids and underprivileged kids is quite amazing. So it was a heart-rendering situation, I must say. But I did have some time on the beach there. Vietnam is a big surprise. It's a little jewel waiting to be unfolded. But there is the downsides there as well, too. But I did have a few days off.
Hey Eddie, it's Ben here. Just wondering how you feel that Takuma's settling into the team at the moment.
Well, he had a horrific race, and he took it so well. The great thing about him is, I think John particularly knows him because he lives close to us in Oxford, but he is, I don't say more Europeanised, but he has brought himself up in the culture of what racing drivers mainly that make Formula 1 have been brought up to, and that is the control, the disciplines, the disappointments, the upsides, the highs and the lows. And he is a thorough professional young driver, and I promise you we will see a lot of him in the future. I'm very excited. I think he is way and by far the best prospect we've seen from Japan for some time, and I think Japanese industry, the Japanese corporate life and culture needs somebody like that in Formula 1 to, if you like, recreate the interest, because a lot of interest in Japan has filter back into football, and particularly with the World Cup coming up there this year. We needed somebody, I think Formula One needed somebody as the talent of Sato to be able to recreate the excitement and the fire that was so evident in years gone by in corporate life in Japan. I think he is a huge talent, and he's with Jordan for a long time to come, and I'm very happy about that.
Great, thanks very much, Eddie, and good luck for the rest of the weekend. We've just seen Kimi Raikkonen go fastest with an improved time of 1 minute 37.399, and that puts him 1.3 seconds ahead now of the time that Michael Schumacher said earlier. But let's see what Michael does. Across the line of 38.568, an improvement from Schumacher, but not enough to unseat Kimi Raikkonen from that top spot.
Well, we don't know quite what McLaren have done in terms of whether they've opted to run a new tyre. We watched David Coulthard now getting a first decent run. I mean, he's been really struggling so far all through the first session this morning. He was off track virtually in his first flying lap this afternoon. So David Coulthard not going to put himself in the front row of the grid temporarily, but in 6th place, and he'll be happy to get something in the bin.
Well, that's for sure, but we'll just have to see whether he can try and do a job that his teammates doing. Kimi Raikkonen fastest, 1.1 seconds as you see the gap between himself and Schumacher. Barrichello, then Heidfeld, Fisichella, that excellent job for Jordan, then Coulthard behind him in 6th, De La Rosa, Ralf Schumacher, Bernoldi up there, and then Button in 10th.
But Heinz-Harald Frentzen is off camera, suddenly leapt up into 5th place, 140.758. So times are now beginning to come thick and fast throughout the field, and even those who are perceived to be at the front are struggling. We've not seen anything particularly special so far from either of the two Williams BMW drivers. Ralph in 9th, Montoya 12th. McLaren clearly the class of the field right now. Barrichello in 3rd place.
Well, here is Barrichello. Let's see whether he can improve on this at all, as the Ferrari team showing such dominance in the first free practice. Now that dominance just coming under a bit of threat. Now remember, this is free practice. It doesn't mean anything in terms of grid position, and the teams definitely running their cars quite differently to one another, but at least it gives us a little bit of comparison, and it does show that the Ferraris, which looked head and shoulders above the rest this morning, are now coming under a little bit more pressure from McLaren, with Kimi Raikkonen fastest.
Well, I have to think it would be a brave man that would write off Ferrari's chances at this stage of this weekend's event, but certainly McLaren clearly have got a balance in the car. They've also got grip, which is probably the more critical thing right now, but it's coming from the young Finn, Kimi Raikkonen, in only his 2nd event for the team, already stamping an authority on the team, and teammate David Coulthard, who one might have assumed would have been the sort of the nominal lead driver, the number 1 driver in the team, is struggling, currently in 4th place. He's made up, on that last lap he made up 2 positions, but for David it really is, I don't know what this guy has got to do to find himself in a position where he can run at the front consistently, reliably, and not feel pressured all the time by his own teammates.
Yeah, he certainly has been out of luck on today, and of course in Melbourne. Barrichello gets it all crossed up under braking into the final corner there. That's not going to help his charge, and off goes Enrique Bernoldi.
And I think he might have lost the engine of Sauber as well.
Massa.
Now, is there oil or something on the back part of the circuit? Suddenly 2 cars have gone off track. That's down at turn 12 and 13, and there's no obvious reason why. Now maybe Bernoldi had a mechanical problem, something maybe, we don't know. Massa followed in sympathy, so 2 Brazilians off on the same corner.
Yeah, well, that's somewhat unfortunate, and it looks as though he's lost the engine as well. So bad news for Enrique Bernoldi. Oh, no, he has still got the engine running. He's got a bit of wheel spinner, but I think he's beached it. Let's take a look. This is where it went wrong for him.
And we've seen that happen so much down in turn 13, out of 12 into 13. So both in this morning session now on this out. There comes Felipe Massa. Now he's seeing what's going on. It's almost like a sympathy off. I think he realised, what's going to happen, and almost overreacted, and suddenly, well, I don't think there was subsequently any liquids on the circuit. It was just an error of driving in the part of Bernoldi, and a rather sympathetic slide off the track from Felipe Massa. Not a happy camper, Tom Walkinshaw. He doesn't like that. He knows he's got a quick car. Right now Frenzen's in 6th place. Bernoldi has been very good all through the session this morning and up until now. They may well want to bring these 2 cars, certainly the car of Bernoldi is not in a very good place. They've got to get it craned or bring some vehicle in to pull it away to safety. It is not well placed right there.
No, hopefully they'll be able to get that out of the way, but the yellow flags are out. You can see the yellow indicators on the top of our screen indicating that there is a yellow flag out somewhere around the track. David Coulthard back into the pits. He has moved up to 4th fastest now. It's Raikkonen for McLaren, ahead of Schumacher and Barrichello for Ferrari, then the McLaren of Coulthard next up. So it's Michelin, Bridgestone, Bridgestone, Michelin, then Bridgestone, and then Bridgestone again, with Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 6th position for Arrows. Fisichella 7th. Button has been pushed down to 8th place now.
Pedro de la Rosa down into 10th place, but once again personal bests in the first sector. So the Spaniard in the Jaguar on another good run, but he's coming up behind. Well done, Alex Young. Let the quicker car go through. Just watch the end plates in the rear wing. I'm not sure there's not a bit of shimmy. I just thought I caught it, and Pedro runs way out, confident enough to run out to the edge of the track to enable him to get the optimum line as he comes down now and into turn 11 through 12, and now into this troublesome 13 and 14. There you see once again yellow flags at that station. Pedro de la Rosa will have to have slowed down below the speed he went through on his quickest lap, otherwise he will be brought in and penalised.
Top speeds, 5 kilometres per hour slower than Montoya's, but we've seen that some of the front-running cars are actually more off the top speeds than that, and yet are quick over the course of a lap. Let's see if there's any improvement for De La Rosa. Yes, there is. Pops him back up into 6th place. So the Jaguar definitely running better in this second free practice session. A 1 minute 40.691 as Rubens Barrichello is about to complete another lap himself, but doesn't show any. Well, in fact, he's coming into the pits. He does he? No, he stayed out there, but he hasn't shown any improvement, particularly on any of the sectors in this lap.
I suspect that Barrichello is on a set of tyres which they've decided they're going to go with this particular compound. So he's just running out the session on these tyres. They're gaining information, but they're probably not going to bother running a new set. There's no real advantage other than maybe they will send one of the two drivers out to see if they can find whatever extra tenths of a second. So currently Raikkonen fastest and Michael Schumacher second fastest. What's interesting to me is David Coulthard, who's 4th, is almost 3 seconds slower than Raikkonen. That indicates that Coulthard has not been out yet on a fresh set of tyres.
I remember Coulthard's still only done 9 laps throughout the course of this morning and this afternoon's session, whereas Kimi Raikkonen has put together 16 laps, so he's had a bit more opportunity there. Across the line goes Mika Salo, 1 minute 40.897. Salo currently in 10th place in the Toyota, with teammate McNish now down in 17th place, but McNish on an improving lap himself. He's just gone through with his own personal best through the first sector. That puts up the green figures on the data screen. If you want to have a look at the timing and scoring on the data, you can see there's also some debris on the circuit there.
It's a fairly large part of debris. It looks like Sauber to me. The colour, maybe it's Jaguar. No, what is it? It's a marker cone, that's what it is. It's one of the corner marker cones. Has been clubbed by some front wheel of a car so aggressively that it's actually dislodged it from its location, and it's been pitched out into the middle of the track. Now, again, be a local yellow flag at that particular point, and hopefully somebody will be courageous enough to step out on track. But mainly they need the cooperation of drivers to slow down, and really slow down.
We're watching Giancarlo Fisichella in the Jordan Honda. There's been some disappointment about the performance of the new Honda engine, not providing perhaps quite the horsepower hoped and expected of it by both BAR and Jordan. But nonetheless, a good qualifying effort in Melbourne from Fisichella. 8th place for him on the grid. Didn't go right for him in the race, of course, because he was involved in that first corner accident. But nonetheless, good effort in qualifying. I wonder if he's going to be able to repeat that here this weekend.
Oh, I suspect he will. And I think if there's one driver in the pit lane that everybody would love to see win a Grand Prix, it is this man. He's got tremendous abilities, naturally very, very fast, and he's now in that part of his Grand Prix life. Oh, but you're taking a bit of a liberty there, where he's reached that stage where you're in your purple patch and you can stay there probably for 5 or 6 years, or in the case of Michael Schumacher, he's never been out of it. So Giancarlo Fisichella, somebody I think everybody in the pit lane would love to see win, and of course if he won for Jordan, that would be their fourth Grand Prix win. That's an oil flag, or certainly indicating something, moisture or other, but I suspect it's an oil flag. Something has gone down on the track just coming into turn 15.
So Fisichella across the line, no improvement on his existing time, just putting in some laps here on used tyres to get and some experience for the race itself. Bernoldi walking back after going off at turn 13 a little earlier on. We saw that incident, and unfortunately that's put him out of the race, or out of this free practice session. Felipe Massa also, of course, went off at that point. On track at the moment, we've got Alan McNish, we've got Rubens Barrichello, Alex Young is out there, so is Fisichella still, Olivier Panis. We haven't really talked much about the BARs, John, because they haven't featured on the timing and scoring screens. Villeneuve currently down in 18th position, and Olivier Panis, well, he's not doing an awful lot better. He's one place behind in 19th.
Not at all satisfactory. I think David Richards was pretty clear and succinct as David can be that they've got a handling problem. And as much as Peter chided him to say, well, was it because of one thing or another, basically what they've got to do is resolve this oversteer problem and get some balance into the car. And again, the fundamental thing of being a Grand Prix driver is confidence for that driver.
Across the line for Mika Salo once more, and 10th fastest, so a slight improvement there for the Finn in the Toyota. Gained just a little bit of time and some more speed on the final speed trap. Yeah,
it's interesting that the Toyota, and in particular Salo, has consistently been the quickest through that particular timing. That's at the start-finish line. So there's plenty of grunt, but also plenty of good traction off turn 15 for the Toyota. So very interesting as we look at Olivier Panis now in the oversteering, and certainly Panis having to be delicate on the throttle to not encourage the wayward back end.
You could see he was correcting that when he was still going into the corner. When he was on the brakes, the thing was still trying to step out on him, and it really does look like hard work. Let's see if we can follow him through this section. Watch the hands on the steering wheel, see how much correction he's having to apply through the fast sweepers. Hopefully the downforce doing its job here. This car's still looking a little wayward, but it's the slower corners, I think, where we'll see the car really moving around a lot.
Yeah, and again, watching Olivier Panis, you sort of sense he's always waiting till he is sure enough that there is confidence and bite in the car before he is able to open the throttle, and of course that leads to slow lap times. For Panis, this is certainly his, up in these first two segments, is his quickest yet of the day in either session. So maybe Olivier's found a bit better balance, but certainly it doesn't look particularly comfortable to drive. And as he now comes up to this notorious turn 13 and into 14, he's only got that final straight, and then into turn 15 and across the start-finish line. So far, looks like an improvement from the Frenchman.
So let's see where this puts him. He was 19th before the start of this lap. This one should move him up a bit. The speed's not brilliant compared to Montoya's top speed. Crossed the curve a little bit on the exit. 19th at the moment, so this puts Panis up a few places, up to 16th position.
Yeah, and that really indicates the difference in horsepower between Honda and BMW, but it's not just that. The Williams is able to come out of turn 14 with more speed. It carries more speed on the exit of the corner. It therefore retains its acceleration at an earlier point on that straight. So it's a combination of horsepower, but also lack of speed off a corner.
Now let's keep an eye on Nick Heidfeld, because he's on a quick lap once again. He's just put in his own personal best through the first sector of the track, and again he seems to be able to throw this car around with a lot more confidence than we could see Panis doing a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that was a deliberate move by Heidfeld. He kicked the tail out because he's got confidence in the car that he can do so. Oh, but again, you see, there's another sign of confidence. He's letting the car run free. It's a bit loose at the back, but he's still got sufficient grip, and he knows the car's not going to catch him out or trick him. I mean, a great little car from a great little driver.
Yes, and I think this will be an improvement for him. It won't be enough to put him right to the top of the times, but nonetheless it should move him up just a little bit. Currently 5th fastest is Nick Heidfeld. Let's see what this lap does.
But David Coulthard in 4th is under threat from Heidfeld. There's only about a thousandth of a second, and there he goes up to 4th place, 1:39.8, and that's half a second quicker now than David Coulthard, who's dropped to 5th.
So now it's Raikkonen, Michael Schumacher, Barrichello, then Heidfeld, who's moved up to 4th. David Coulthard in 5th. You're looking at Raikkonen at the moment, his teammate, and Raikkonen's just set the first fastest segment time once again. So he is absolutely flying, this young Finn, into just his second season of Formula 1 Grand Prix racing. Moved to the top team, and so far so good. He'd set the fastest lap in Australia, and he's certainly setting the pace in this second free practice session.
Well, Ron Dennis called Kimi Raikkonen the Iceman. Well, I tell you what, couldn't be a better place to have a bit of ice than here in Malaysia with the temperatures. He didn't manage to maintain that speed through the second segment. He didn't even attain a personal best, but is he committed? Well, there's one young man who knows only one way to go, and that's forward, and to do it fast.
That was impressive, but look at that, he's on the grass coming out of turn number 14.
I think only Bob Marley's been on the grass more than Kimi Raikkonen's been there.
Here he comes down to the end, to the final hairpin, and see if we can get him, see what the time is as he comes out. Will this be a further improvement for Kimi Raikkonen? 1:37.399, his previous best? No, he lost a bit more through those second two segments. So Kimi Raikkonen finishing off that lap. Meanwhile, we've got a chance to hear from Tom Walkinshaw. Tom, welcome to the programme. Can you hear me, Tom?
Well, in the meantime, Ralf Schumacher, quickest in the first segment, personal best in the second segment, currently down in 12th place. We'll hope to get back to Tom Walkinshaw a bit later. Communications in the pit lane with so much radio traffic going on sometimes is difficult, and of course the huge buildings around us sometimes screen the signals. Ralf Schumacher, really the first time we've seen a performance from Ralf in this session that looks promising. So much so he's third quickest. That's
a good performance. That's more promising. That's what we expected to see after he pushed the Ferrari so hard in qualifying last year. A 1:38, so, and Kimi spun it, but he's kept it running. And well done, Kimi Raikkonen. Keeps it going and gets out of trouble. That's good news, as he is the fastest man out there at the moment.
But David Coulthard's pretty fast as well. Set personal best in those first and second segments. Comes out of turn 15, comes up across start-finish line. David Coulthard is now second. It's a McLaren, Mercedes-Benz, 1, 2, and also for Michelin.
Well, things have certainly changed around a little bit in this second free practice session. It's clear that McLaren, well, they had their problems in the first session, particularly with David. Kimi didn't really feature, but this second session, that was Kimi's spin. That was fairly harmless. We've seen a lot of spins like that. Michael Schumacher himself, of course, having a similar problem earlier.
Yeah, a little bit of brake lock up going in, just takes a chunk of steering lock, the back swings round. But I mean, the guy, you know, he's on top of his game right now. A little spin like that, well, he'll store that away for future reference.
But Coulthard's on a very quick lap again here, almost as fast as Raikkonen's, or in fact Ralf Schumacher has the fastest sector time through that first sector at the moment, and David is almost as fast as that, so this could be a good one. Let's watch it, see how neat and tidy he can be. Does he get the power on? Well, yes he does. That was nice out of turn number 9. Very important corner to get the power on early, and he achieved that nicely. Going past the stricken cone, Montoya's also flying at the moment.
Yeah, Juan Pablo Montoya, quickest of everybody so far this afternoon. And I suspect Coulthard has finally got a fresh set of rubber. Montoya, no doubt, has done a similar thing. Out of turn 14, David Coulthard wasn't a personal best in that second segment, but had personal best in terms of speed in the corner. Still maintaining the momentum. He's got to find, well, the best part of half, or almost 8/10 of a second to... Oh, he's coming to the pits. He's decided to give it up. But here's Montoya. First in the first segment, personal best in the second segment. Can he do it in the third?
Well, he may well be able to move up the order now. Ralf Schumacher is up in 4th place at the moment, and Montoya pushing the car as hard as he knows, even though it's only free practice and this doesn't count at all for qualifying.
Well, Juan Pablo Montoya took an enormous liberty with the car there. I mean, he's on a hot lap, he knows it. He wasn't going to sacrifice it by lifting off. We want to see a bit more of that from Montoya. And really, down in 13th place is not representative of him, the car, or the team. And this should see him somewhere, certainly in the top 3. It doesn't, it's top 5. Disappointing.
Top 5. 5th place for Juan Pablo Montoya as he comes across the line. 1 minute 39.158.
Copy that. You are purple sector 1. You are losing 8/10 sector 2, 5/10 sector 3 to Raikkonen. But Raikkonen looks like he's on low fuel. Low fuel.
Well, that's the sort of information you love to get on the team radio.
Compared to Ralf, you're about 5/10 off. 5/10 off.
That all-important question.
Repeat that one. Yeah, you're about 5/10 off, as I said. I can't see the sector times at the moment, so I can't tell you where you're losing it, but you are still purple sector 1.
So we're certainly seeing some improvements in times now from the Michelin runners. We've got Ralf Schumacher up there in 4th place, and suitably enough, Peter, I do believe that you've got Pierre Dubasquier with you, boss man of Michelin. What's he got to say about it all?
Pierre, obviously very early days yet, but nice performance this afternoon from McLaren Mercedes.
Well, we're just working. You never know what's going on, who's carrying how much fuel, and what the program of testing is. So it's just technical testing, doesn't mean a lot.
We've seen quite a lot of oversteer here at this circuit, which in Formula One terms is relatively unusual. Usually we have a lot of understeer. How do you account for that?
Usually the less grip you have on the track, the more understeering is a car. So since the car was balanced for different circuits with the tendency of oversteering with low level of grip, with that green track as it was at the beginning, the traction is very high, and it changed the balance of the car into more oversteering. So they have to rebalance the car, but not too much, because it will become more balanced after the laps. And tomorrow afternoon for qualifying definitely will be different.
Okay, let's lay this one to rest. A lot of people say the Michelins do not like the cold weather and they only like the hot weather. What do you say about that?
I'm still trying to find out where it comes from, because we have been very bad on the cold rain in Imola last year by 4 degrees on the ground. That's the only circumstances that I know. We're doing very well in Spa, for example. It was cold and humid, and we set up a tremendous lap time in those conditions. So it's we won Monte Carlo Rally also.
Great. Thank you very much, Pierre.
Thank you very much.
I think we will get worried if they start running Monte Carlo studded tyres, though, on the Malaysian Grand Prix. But Pierre Dubasquier, of course, John, you know, you worked with him over the years, a very experienced tyre engineer, one of the best in the business.
Well, not just the best in the tyre business, one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. And I mean, for sure, Michelin, the problems that they had in Malaysia, not having the ambient temperature which they had anticipated. But of course, as they mentioned, they run rallies, and rally tyres, like Grand Prix tyres, have to run it in that temperature zone. And they can find a way to get the temperature in the tyre, and certainly they appear to have resolved that particular problem here this weekend.
Well, we're seeing some interesting pictures here from Montoya. And Barrichello's off at the side of the track. Now that's alongside the straights, going up towards
coming to turn 9, yeah.
I wonder, it looks as though he may just have pulled off there, doesn't it?
That looks as if it's a mechanical problem or electrical. Ross Brawn, sitting on the pit wall, will be in communication with Rubens Barrichello. Luckily he's pulled off at one of the cuts in the barriers, so that car could be safely pushed behind the barrier, and there'll be no problem for the marshals or for the people around the car.
Meanwhile, some good performances from the Toyotas. Mika Salo has popped up to 8th and McNish up to 10th place, so that's good news. They're both putting in laps, and they're both in that, just inside that top 10, and I should think they'll be fairly happy about that.
I would think they'd be delighted with it, though it seems that Toyota probably loses out maybe a little bit more than some of the other cars in that second segment of the circuit. That's maybe the more technical bit, and really that's a reflection, I would think, of the downforce levels that Toyota are getting from their chassis. But you know, it's very early days, and Gustav Brunner is a very smart man who's done such a great job for many teams over the years, and I think Toyota are going to be one of the big surprises. The other one, to me, the sleeper team of the year, to me, really is going to be those orange cars, the Arrows.
Well, they are doing well. They're not doing quite so well now, but they haven't been out for a little while. Frentzen has been sitting in the pits, so he's gradually seen his time drop down to 12th, but I don't think that's a cause for concern. I think they've just been sitting waiting, and I wonder if we'll see them come back out in the latter part. There's just 13 minutes to go now.
Of course, Benoldi stopped a little bit earlier. We saw him off with that spin down at turn 13, so he's out of it for the afternoon. And right now, I mean, the teams are just going through the process. They'll maybe throw, in the case of Frentzen, a set of fresh rubber on the car just to go out and establish, or they may not even bother. They may be sufficiently confident with what they've done today to continue the information-seeking path for Sunday's Grand Prix.
Now we're on board with Jacques Villeneuve. Let's see if there's any progress here for Jacques, who's down in 19th position at the moment. And he's just going on to a lap as we head up towards turn 1. Tight corner, this one. Got to get it tight into the apex. You can see how long they have to wait to get the power on. And then through turn 2. Now let's just watch how much confidence Villeneuve can be driving this car. Normally when he's confident with a car, John, Villeneuve really throws it around. Yes,
he's a courageous man, a very skillful man, and somebody who isn't afraid to take the risk. The whole thing of confidence is something that, with the number of accidents that he's had, he's prepared to drive a car through a problem to see if he can get the real solution to the problem. Sometimes it causes a bigger problem for the team because it comes back in the back of a truck with about 2 wheels hanging off it.
Well, he's pushing quite hard at the moment. He's not improving on his time so far, though, so he may be using some fairly worn tyres at this point in the session. Schumacher back out, and into the latter part of this session, they may well not have new tyres to put on again, so we may not see much improvement.
Well, what's interesting, on the tyres Michael's on, and I suspect this set may have done quite a number of laps now, he was personal quickest in those final 2 segments, and those are critical segments on the circuit, so Ferrari working very much to improve the car rather than going for out-and-out fast laps, which other teams are currently looking at.
Meanwhile, Mika Salo has just moved up to 7th fastest, has crossed the line. We can see the trap speeds for Jacques Villeneuve. His best, 299 kilometers per hour. So pretty good for the Honda power in the back of that BAR, but the overall lap time not that high. As we say, he's running on pretty old tyres, but nonetheless, he is down in 15th position at the moment.
I'm constantly amazed. Oh, very nearly lost it there. Well, quick reactions in turn 2 from Jacques Villeneuve. But Mika Salo is 7th quickest. I know this isn't important, but nonetheless, brand new team in their 2nd Grand Prix, not just a team that's based in the UK, but a huge 4th largest manufacturing company in the world, Toyota, who opted to set up in Germany. Everybody laughed at Toyota when they decided to do that. They had their own very good reasons, and maybe they'll not be laughing so much as the season progresses.
Absolutely, it's been a good start so far, and we'll watch the progress. Now some new tyres going on, and that's on Ralph's car. So let's see what he can do now as he comes back out. Of course, we don't know how much fuel he's got on board. Might be a heavy load. They might have possibly pumped out some fuel.
Well, I think what they'll do, they'll have started this session with a certain weight. They measure fuel and weight these days, maybe 40 kilograms of fuel on board. They let that fuel just use up and the weight will come down, put a set of fresh rubber on. We've got some 9.5 minutes remaining, and suddenly the circuit is going to be from being very empty to being very, very busy. And Takuma Sato, another one joining. Sato still in 7th place, and Eddie Jordan very complimentary about his young driver, and one that he hopes will bring glory to his team, but probably more importantly for Eddie, bring glory to Honda and to Japan.
Yes, that's right. But it would be great to see a Japanese driver performing at the top level in Formula One. We've seen a number of drivers come in. He's certainly following a line of Japanese Formula One drivers, but none of them have really ever achieved true success. Let's hope Sato could be the one.
I just got a glimpse of Eddie Irvine leaving his garage. Eddie's had a fairly rough day so far, currently 21st quickest, but I suspect what the team have done is split the workload. One has gone one direction, Eddie's gone down probably the road of doing work for the Grand Prix on Sunday, but now in a fresh set of rubber again, probably with a relatively light fuel load. Expect to see Irvine leap dramatically from 21st, probably up to somewhere around about 10, 11, 12. De La Rosa currently 11th quickest. He also has just gone back out on track, but I suspect he's already had his run on his fresh set of tyres.
Mika Salo trying to cool down a little bit as he sits in the pits. That's where the heat soak really gets the drivers, John. What's not so bad going around, you're concentrating what's going on, you've got a bit of airflow, but you come back into the pits, you sit there, the engine is steaming away, the radiators in the side pods beside you, and that's where you really feel the heat.
The good thing about the modern car is it's so well built, it's so strong, and of course there's no way that the hot air can actually bleed in, as Jackie Stewart was explaining to us about his days when you have front-mounted radiators and things like that. But there is just a heat soak generally, and even at your own body, when the exertion that you're required to put into, even for 3-lap runs, is quite sufficient in this heat to have you sweat like a horse, and you come in then and sit down and the sweating continues. The best thing to do is get back out on track and get some air circulation, and hopefully just manage to cool down a little bit. It's only relative, but it still helps.
Absolutely. Well, Nick Heidfeld just coming out through turn 4. A little bit of bumpy on the braking, you notice, into that turn 4. The rest of the track is pretty smooth. It's a good surface. It can be a bit abrasive on the tyres, but it's generally a very smooth track. You don't see many big bumps. That was nice through there, wasn't it?
Again, that's just confidence. Heidfeld's able, the back end steps out. He doesn't have to get out of the throttle. He puts lock on, he just checks the car. He still maintains pretty good momentum. But look, 1.9 seconds down, and that is second intermediate on current fastest Kimi Räikkönen. And well, Heidfeld all the way down in 9th place. He is some 2 and a bit seconds. So he's got to find a little bit more time in this final section.
Now, we know that Ralph here went out on a new set of tyres, so we might see some improvement from him. He is already 4th fastest, remember, a good effort. Williams BMW showing some better pace now.
He's not doing it in this lap. I think he's just maybe doing a bit of heat treatment on this set of tyres. He's not loading the tyre up, he's not running it hard. He's already had an out lap. This is certainly just his first flying lap as team principal Frank Williams and Patrick Head watch the progress of Owen Ralph. Just he's losing time there. He's got to get on the gas now. Ralph lost a little bit of time on the exit, but hopefully he will make it up on his first really serious flying lap on a brand new set of tyres.
Rubens Barrichello's made it back to the Ferrari pit. Remember, his car just died on him out towards turn number 9, but he's now back in the pits once more.
Kimi Räikkönen about to go back out again. Just caught on line. As we wait to see the young Finn. Yeah, pretty good start. No rubber laid down. The traction control device now working very efficiently on the McLaren after all the problems they had in the early and middle part of last year. Eddie Irvine completing his flying lap on this set of tyres. Irvine down in 21st place, personal bests. Well, it only goes to 19th. That's disappointing.
Yes,
but then it might just take more than one lap now with these tyres to get the best out of them. I would be surprised, but you know, we've seen Ralph cruising around in his first flying lap.
That's right, and Ralph now putting a better lap together, 25.6. That's pretty quick through the first sector for Ralf Schumacher, and a high top speed at the first speed trap as well. Montoya also going reasonably quickly at this point, so might also have put a new set of tyres on for a little run at the end of the session. Just under 5 minutes to go, as you can see from the clock at the top of the screen, counting us down now. Räikkönen still the pace setter in this free practice session for the Malaysian Grand Prix. Still that cone in the middle of the road, but it doesn't affect anybody. It's just off the racing line. Montoya hurls it through those turns 12 and 13, and the braking on the turn for turn 14, the Sunway Lagoon corner, back down the back straight, building up to about 195 to 200 miles an hour down here. I don't think this lap is going to be any great improvement for him.
Again, he just throws the car at the corner, decides, oh, I'm not going to make it till he goes in the pit lane. But just a curious side, one of the guys from the BMW team and one of the Ferrari guys, they've got their notepads out saying, what have you got, mate? Well, I've got this. You tell me yours and I'll tell you mine. Way, Heinz-Harald Frentzen gets it all screwed up, locked up, and decides, well, let's go in the pit lane. It looks like it was coming there in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, and somebody is spun down there, and that is Ralph.
Ralph indeed. We're down to turn 4.
And he's kept it running.
Big disappointment for Ralph. You on that new set of rubber to lose it down in turn 4, and that's another lap lost and another opportunity to establish himself at the sharper end. He's currently 4th. He'd like to be a little bit higher than that.
Now, David Coulthard seems... Oh, and there's Eddie, who's also come to a stop. No, it's De La Rosa, sorry. Pedro De La Rosa, who's come to a stop. That's just down at turn 2. And disappointment for him. Eddie's still out there at the moment. Last time around, no improvement. De La Rosa, a little bit of smoke coming from the back of that car, so it looks as though his session's run, but there's only just over 3 minutes to go anyway.
I think where the car is, it's in a fairly safe part of the track nonetheless. A localised yellow flag at that part of the circuit, so remind yourself when you go through it not to go through quicker than you've done in any previous lap. As Coulthard comes down into turn 15, again not showing any indication that this is going to be an improvement in his current 1:38.038, some 7/10 of a second away from Räikkönen. Yeah, 38.5, half a second down in his personal best. Pedro climbed across the barrier. He's not terribly far from the pit lane. Let's look and see. Oh, well, that is an engine failure. Yes, something has gone Again, looks like the right-hand side of the V10 engine. And when these things go, they go quickly. There's not really very much warning to the driver. The team probably know about it. The engineers and looking at the bank of computers can say, oh no, it's going to go. And all of a sudden, as soon as they've said it, there she blows.
Montoya having a discussion with Patrick Head here. Montoya finds himself 5th fastest at this point. Teammate Ralf Schumacher 4th fastest, still out on track at this point as well. Mika Salo's going quite quickly. He's just set a personal best through the first sector, but nobody seems to have an answer for Kimi Räikkönen at the moment. Now, it's quite possible that they did pump some fuel out of Kimi's car for him to put in a quick lap earlier on, but David Coulthard still won't be terribly happy to have to settle for 2nd place behind his teammate.
This is the man who really is getting into the swing of the Sepang circuit. Mika Salo currently down in 7th place, personal best now in the first 2 sectors. And teammate McNish also getting on with the programme. McNish in 10th, 7 and 10th. Okay, it's only Friday afternoon, it's not for good positions. But I'm just getting, it's amusing me, I love it. I think it's wonderful. The new team can come in like this, just kicks up out of dust as he goes across the start-finish line. And up to 5th place, 39.066.
That's a good effort indeed. That puts him ahead of Montoya, would you believe? In the Williams, it's also put him ahead of Barrichello, who of course we know has stopped out on track, so didn't get a chance to improve his time. But Ove Anderson there, the boss of Toyota, surely must be pleased with that little performance. Of course, only they know how the car's set up, whether it's running light, but...
Well, I tell you, Ben, I know one Irishman's going to be talking to Ove Anderson if he's given the opportunity.
Are we talking drivers here, perhaps? Well, we shall find out. Meanwhile, on track is the man who's set the pace so far. Just 30 seconds to go in this session. Kimi Räikkönen, he's on used tyres. He's not going to go any faster at the moment. And it's still been a good effort from the Finn to finish off. It looks as though he's going to end today as fastest in free practice. Look at that. Whoa!
Well, he was never going to get round the corner. You could see from the here, you look at the onboard, he comes down and just all of a sudden, watch his hands, he knows he's not going to get it. But he did the right thing, he straightened the car up. It's easy to run off track there, there's no danger or problem for the car. And this 1 hour session now is over as well.
So, it's all over. Let's see if anyone's likely to improve on their final lap. Well, I don't think anyone's going particularly quickly. Truly's just put an improvement in to go 9th fastest. Mika Salo here with the Sauber right behind him of Nick Heidfeld. Coming out of that final corner, they'll take the checkered flag this time around. Salo already 5th fastest, remember? And that's where he stays, that lap, not an improvement. But a great effort from Toyota here today. Salo ending up 5th fastest, McNish 11th fastest. And yes, they may well have been experimenting with qualifying setups because they have that much more to learn, but still very, very impressive. Now, further on down the list, let's just take a look at some of the highlights and some of the lowlights, if you like. Button has been pushed back to 8th place in this second session. De La Rosa ended up in 12th, Frentzen in 13th. Further on down the list, Villeneuve still languishing down in 17th place with Panis 18th. Jung has moved up to 19th, and that's but Eddie Irvine down into 20th place.
Well, that certainly is a great disappointment indeed. I think Eddie Irvine with that fresh set of rubber would have expected more. And to have Alex Young and Leone Minardi currently out there, because remember Mark Webber had that failure very early in the session. It's Kimi Räikkönen who's been the star of this session here on Friday afternoon in Malaysia, and really are we seeing just the beginning of a new star that really is going to shine bright for possibly another decade or so.
Well, it's possible, John, but of course there's so much for him to prove before he gets there. It's one thing to be running fast in free practice, but to do it under pressure in qualifying when it really counts, that's where you see the true mark. But now look, Michelin's are now appearing on our times sheet, slightly different to what we saw at the end of the first free practice, where it was all the red Bridgestone marks, and this time it's the Michelin's, and I think a bit of experimenting's been going on between different Michelin compounds, and McLaren and Williams will be much happier with the way this second session has gone.
Well, they clearly have found the choice of tyre that suits the conditions and suits the circuit. So that's there again.
It's Kimi, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's just a little bit of enthusiasm Maybe this time he might get a ticking off from his boss. That one looked to be slightly unnecessary as the session is over, and really you shouldn't be doing that sort of thing on your coming in lap, though very often drivers drive as hard on that in lap as they do on a flying lap, because again it's an opportunity to get an extra lap, another extra lap's information.
Well, an interesting day then for the first of 3 days in Malaysia on this Sepang track. Let's take a look at what happened to Kimi here. Was he just getting carried away, over enthusiastic? Ooh, well, it wasn't as if he was messing around. He was pushing hard, and it just got away from him.
Yes, it's difficult to tell. Maybe they'll go on board again, see what happens. He wasn't that doesn't look like he did anything particularly unusual or different, but maybe just slightly lack of, not concentration, but just relaxed the way in. So just shows you how finely balanced, how little the grip is between having it and not having it. Twice, pretty much almost within the space of 2 laps.
Well, he's ended up fastest as Kimi Räikkönen. Michael Schumacher third fastest today after setting the pace earlier on, but I have to say that surely the battle for pole will be all about this man as he tries to take his 4th pole in a row here, and Ferrari's 150th pole position. After watching today's events, John, you wouldn't really want to bet against him, despite the efforts of McLaren Mercedes, particularly this young man, Kimi Räikkönen.
It's going to be a very close call. That 1 hour of qualifying, we'll get a little preview of it on Saturday morning at the end of the second 45-minute session. That will really give us, I think, the indication as to who's been doing what. What happens on a Friday, we never know quite how much fuel one team has on board. We don't know whether Ferrari, in spite of putting on fresh rubber, may have still had a lot of fuel on board. They would tend not to want to show their hand unnecessarily, particularly in a race which is going to be quite difficult like this, where tyre choices will be critical, but probably more so will be the decision as to how many pit stops you're going to make, and that will all be worked out tonight and then tomorrow's 2 sessions, and then finally, of course, for Sunday's Grand Prix it will all be for real. What we've seen today is great for McLaren, and I'm delighted for Raikkonen and David Coulthard. Salo and Toyota, again, wonderful jobs. Jensen Button up in 8th place ahead of Trulli. You know, it's all coming back for Jensen, and Nick Heidfeld running at the top 10 for Sauber.
Yes, an exciting lineup to do battle. McNish there in 11th place, De La Rosa in 12th ahead of Frentzen. Fisichella ended up quite a long way down. In fact, the 2 Jordans did end up a long way down, funnily enough, in the second free practice after going so well earlier on. All the Bridgestone runners together there, BAR and Jordan, and Arrows ending up further back than we might have expected after their very promising runs earlier on. So it's a difficult one to call, confusing, and we're just going to have to follow the action throughout the course of the weekend through the next 2 free practices and of course the all-important qualifying session itself. But there's the star of the show. That's what people will be looking at, that time that he set today, and I'm sure that smile for Mr. Cool is certainly a little sign that he's feeling confident here in Malaysia.
Well, he's one very happy young Finn, and look at his face, he was smiling as he was talking to the team, and delighted that he's at the top of the list. First time in his career he's been quickest in any session.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights from free practice today.